Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltiziak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast, part of the Minute Media Podcast Network. The Detroit Lions are now in a new, grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players, gaining more insight on what makes this team go. Welcome to another episode. Folks, in this episode, we have a lot to get to, so buckle up, get comfortable, maybe get some popcorn out. Of course, we're going to preview the Detroit Lions season preview against the Green Bay Packers. They open on Sunday in Lambeau Field. In addition to that, though, we're going to share what we expect from Green Bay, fresh off their trade for linebacker Micah Parsons. We're also going to discuss how the Lions match up and what we expect from Detroit. In addition to that, we'll do a little reintroduction of sorts and share some exciting news about the podcast. That and more. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
This is Amon-Ra St. Brown, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
Welcome to Not the Same Old Lions podcast. Joining me as usual is Coach Jerry Angers. Welcome, Coach.
Thank you, and glad to be here.
We're happy to have you, and our sports writer, James Cook. Good to have you here, James.
Good to be here. I don't think I can compete with Jerry's hat, though.
Now, he does rock that well. I totally agree. Well, folks, it is the start of season 3 for the show, and we thought this might be a good time to do a little reintroduction of sorts. And let's start with the name of the show. Well, what is in a name? Well, Taylor Decker uttered these words, Not the Same Old Lions, in year 2 of Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes' era. So it kind of stuck out, right? And when looking for a name, they say it's supposed to be short, it's supposed to be catchy, and I get it. It's not short, but it is a little bit catchy, guys. And if we're looking at the meaning, I've always been an optimist when being a Lions fan, and I'll be honest, I never knew much about SOL mantra at all, but those are the first 3 letters of my last name, so that might mean a little bit something there. And I will say this, though. If you add the word podcast to the end, I gravitate towards that meaning with the show's name, Not the Same Old Lions podcast. And I think that helps make the show what it is. If you've listened to us at length, you know we're all fans of the Detroit Lions. But with that great insight we have, at least we believe we have great insight, you guys are the judges of that one, comes a good amount of experience to fuel that insight we have. And so we thought we'd take a minute, reintroduce ourselves to you who have been listening for a while, or those of you checking us out for the first time. So let's start with our senior sports writer and Sports Writer of the Year, James Cook. James, just reintroduce yourself a little bit to the listeners. Let them know a little bit more about you.
I've been at the Traverse City Record Eagle for 25 years now, since started in 2000. I covered both of Jerry's state championship football appearances down at Ford Field with Glen Lake. CMU grad, preacher's kid, music nut, like going to rock concerts. All that kind of stuff. Obviously, Detroit Lions fan for life. Grew up watching them as a kid, and I just had to do a thing the other day where I filled out a thing for a little bio for our website or something, and so I had to look up how many times I had won awards or whatever. So I've won 51 Michigan Press Association awards over my time since I left CMU.
Nice.
Well, there you go, folks. And the word humble needs to go in that biography somewhere, because he left that thing towards the end and did not make a big deal about it, did not lead with it. But that is James Cook, the senior sports writer for the Traverse City Record Eagle, throwing lots of great insights, doing lots of great research every episode, and drinking his blue Kool-Aid every episode as well. Next up, we do have Coach Jerry Angers. It's a guy I used to work with. I, at one point, was on his middle school coaching staff at one point. Coach, tell the listeners a little bit about your background. You have won some awards and had some success as well.
Yeah, those 2 games that James covered, we did lose both of those in the state finals, but I wouldn't trade that experience for anything.
I wasn't going to bring that up.
Yeah, that's okay. You know, one was 7-0, so I'm going to give you that, and we won't talk about public and private schools. We'll leave it at that. Anyways, won an award, was up for the Coach of the Year award for the Lions that year, which was a great experience. So, I've got to spend 3 quality quality days on that field. So covering the Lions is pretty huge. I got 30 plus years of coaching in, 29 in the high school level. I've coached at all levels in the high school, middle school, Pop Warner. Worked 2 years at Saginaw Valley as analytics for special teams as well as defense. So that was neat working on the college level. And then, of course, now that I'm scouting and training director for Bull Rush Sports, which we're trying to put guys into the league. And, every winter I get to travel to Marquette and train some elite athletes, and hopefully they make a roster. So that's it in a nutshell, and just glad to be part of Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
That's it in a nutshell. That's a lot there, Coach. That's a pretty big nutshell. A lot of experience, a lot of game film he breaks down, a lot of different insights he brings as well. Happy to have you with us, Coach, and just adds one more element, one more layer to this show. Of course, I am Matthew Soltesiak, the host or producer. I guess you could say I went to journalism school at Syracuse University in hopes of being right where I am here today, guys. I spent time as a sports reporter. I was a weekend sports anchor for an NBC affiliate here in Michigan, and I've always loved the Lions, and honestly, I just wanted to do something professionally that revolved around them. So that's a little bit about me with my journalism and Detroit Lions background. And now let's move on to our big announcement. We have a title sponsor for our podcast, guys. This is new, this is big, and we think it's a great fit. It's Roaster Jack Coffee Company out of Traverse City, Michigan. They are now the title sponsor for Not the Same Old Lions podcast. You can see it right here, Roaster Jack Company. The sponsor is great because the company's been around since 1999. They've been selecting and roasting fine coffees from smallholder farms around the world. They create exquisite blends, single origin beans for your morning ritual, whether you're brewing for a perfect morning shot or waking up the entire crew. The only thing better than great coffee, they say, is great coffee with a discount. And with that, you can just visit roasterjack.com and use the code LIONS for 20% off your next shipment. And this is a Not the Same Old Lions podcast exclusive. So make sure you include the code LIONS to get that 20% off. And Roaster Jack Coffee Company says, be a hero, brew great coffee, and go Lions. So exciting to have them as our new title sponsor, our first title sponsor. And because of that, we would like to give away one bag of free coffee from Roaster Jack Coffee. Now, all you got to do is make sure you are subscribing to YouTube, our YouTube channel. And then if you haven't already done that, then like this video and leave a comment. Make sure all those three things are done, and that will enter you to win. One winner will be selected game day or by game day for that free bag of coffee. Okay, we're almost to the preview. We got so much going on in this show today. We got to touch on something Brad Holmes said last week, Coach, because a lot of people have been wondering. This happened last year too. When the Lions cut down to 53 people, they cut below 53. And everyone's like, wait, why don't you keep more guys on your roster? And they cut down to 52 last year. They cut down to 50 this year. And Brad Holmes said they didn't deem 53 guys worthy from their current group of being on the roster. And he's like, why would we keep somebody on the roster if we don't think they're worthy of it? That's kind of a mind shift, I think, from what most fans would look at, because they think, well, you keep the next three best guys just to fill it in. But Brad Holmes had a different thought approach to this. What was your reaction when you heard that?
Well, and again, I think it's the same thing. Let's not keep three just so that we can say we have 53. Let's keep the best 50, And they said that the roster was the best from top to bottom. So your top 50 is the best that we've had. And now we just added three guys to it. And there was some, we added a safety, we added a defensive end. Maybe it's not the defensive end that everybody wanted, but Wheat seems to be a pretty good football player. And I watched some film on him. So again, now we feel that our roster is full with the best 53. Plus we have guys that are coming off the injured report or injury soon. And now we're going to be at 55, 56. Now we're going to have to start cutting people. So competition breeds winners.
There you go. Some great insight. And again, you said it. There will be some guys coming back, and they found some other guys out there that they thought were better or more equipped to fill those holes than guys that had been in camp all summer. So that should also give Lions fans some encouragement. Now, one of those guys is safety Thomas Harper. They grabbed him right before the holiday weekend. They got him off waivers, James. What do you know about Thomas Harper?
He's a experienced safety that brings he's played in the NFL before, more than some of the guys that they had competing for those last couple of roster spots. Veteran safety, he can play corner slot as well. So the nickel role, and is also a guy who plays a lot of special teams too. So that's another thing that they always look for in the back end of their roster is can you contribute on special teams?
All right. And again, they found a guy that's got some game experience that can do those things. That adds a little bit more value to that. And some of those guys that we thought about before, they are on the Lions practice squad. So that gives you even more extended depth. All right. Let's finally move on to the game preview. Now, as we get started for the preview of the game itself, we got some insights from a reporter out of Green Bay. Spoke to him just before the Micah Parsons trade. And here's that short interview on what he thought it was going to be important for going into the season opener against the Lions. Joining me today is Cam Ezer, sports reporter from the CBS affiliate WFRV-TV out of Green Bay, Wisconsin. And he is going to give us some insights on what we might expect from the season opener, Green Bay Packers, Detroit Lions. Now, Cam, it's opening weekend. No one knows what to expect, but we're going to try. We're going to try and talk about it and figure out what we think we might expect. First off, do you like this? Packers opening at home, facing the Lions, division rivals to start the season all across the NFL. What's your feeling on that?
First season opener at Lambeau since 2018. First time Matt LaFleur has gotten an opportunity to start week one at home. Remember, he became the head coach in 2019, so he's thrilled about it. Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, these are the two teams that I think many expected a couple of years ago to meet in the NFC Championship after the Packers shocked the Cowboys and probably should have beaten the 49ers. And the rivalry has only grown from there. These are the two best teams in the NFC North, which has come out as most likely the best division in football. I think it's great. At Lambeau, too, a historic site. You know that whoever the commentators are, I forgot to give it a look. They're gonna make sure that is prime time, and they have the crew out there. So I think it's amazing. Why not start off with some fireworks?
All right. Well, I'm not opposed to the Lions visiting Lambeau in September versus December, January, but it is what it is. I don't love the idea of opening against division rivals. I would love it if everybody opened it up against somebody in the other conference even. But again, you play the games that are scheduled, as Dan Campbell would tell you, and you can't worry about the other things. So let's talk about that. Other than a win, of course, because that's what you want. But what are you looking for? What would Green Bay fans be looking for out of this game for the Packers to know that the team's looking good?
Yeah, a good start. I mean, last year in week 4 against the Vikings, they laid an egg in that first half. And also against the Lions, they've done that as well, right? It seems like the Packers have turned into a second half squad, or at least they did a season ago. And this Green Bay squad has said constantly, we just need to start fast. And that's exactly what Packers fans want to see against a division rival. Yeah, I mean, I think also a thing to consider is without Jair Alexander, can Keyshawn Nixon, can Carrington Valentine, can Nate Hobbs, can the quarterback stop those dynamic wide receivers? Because the Lions were incredible at explosive plays, and that defense was great at stopping explosive plays. And what, says let's kick off the 2025 season more than an explosive play or stopping one. And the Lions, the last couple of years, why they've been one of the top teams in the NFL is they've taken advantage of those opportunities. So as much as I'd love to say, oh, Jordan Love having a heck of a game and connecting with his now healthy wide receivers who are finally back from injury that they suffered in training camp, I think it's stopping explosive plays on that defensive side, whether that be through the air or on the ground with, Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery and that two-headed snake. And then also connecting on explosive plays, because it just didn't seem like the Packers had that moment during last season where it's like, whoa, like by week 1, this team can contend for a Super Bowl. It's usually taken some time. So I think that's what fans at Lambeau are hoping for.
All right. Well, who should the Lions fans be keeping an eye on? Who could be a difference maker for the Packers in this game, or somebody that, could play a pivotal role for Green Bay?
Rashawn Gary was a Pro Bowler last season, but I think we all kind of scratched our heads and said, wait, but we all thought Rashawn Gary could have had a better season. Even he thought he could have had a better season. But that's how dynamic Gary is, right? Even when on the stat sheet, when he's not making a crazy impact like a Trey Hendrickson, like he still made an impact, but it wasn't close to a Trey Hendrickson. And the sack numbers and the getting after the quarterback, if he can get to Jared Goff, or he could blow up that O line, or he could stop the run game on that outside as a defensive end, I mean, that changes the dynamic of this entire game. Because why were the Lions so good last year and the year before? Is they could blow up offensively at any point of the game. And if you could have a stalwart somewhere in that backfield to allow the secondary to get their bearings, if Rashawn Gary can get a few sacks, when Rashawn Gary had a few sacks in games last year, it was kind of, it was kind of a final at that point. Oh, the Packers are going to win this game. So, yeah, again, I'd love to say, a wide receiver that goes for 200 yards or Josh Jacobs. That's the easy answer. I think Rashawn Gary having a more explosive season and taking that next step. He's got his extension. He has every reason to have a good game, especially against the Lions. I mean, this team was 1-5 against the division last year. So I think he needs to prove himself. He's been a leader. He's been communicative with this team. So I'm going Gary.
All right, well, you've kind of already led into this one, but what's it going to take for Green Bay to win this game? What do the Packers need to do if they're going to come out with a W?
I think it goes back to that fast start. They have to start fast because the Lions could go up 21-0 in a heartbeat. Jordan Love needs to have a good game in terms of those small plays that turn into chunk plays. I think oftentimes you get to third down, it's 3rd and 6 or 3rd and 5, and you go for that big play down the sideline, and that just changes everything. I also think limit the mistakes. If you're Jordan Love, remember what happened in that Lions game at Lambeau last year right before halftime where falling to the ground, chooses to throw it, and he'll admit to it. That was an awful play that changed the trajectory of that game. Still think the Lions win if that play doesn't happen, but it doesn't matter. You can't make that play and throw a pick six in that situation when you should just throw it away. So for Jordan Love, it's find your guys down the field and don't worry about going for the 30, 40, 50-yarder. It's great to connect with Christian Watson as he did on Thanksgiving a few years ago for that first play of the game, 50 yards. Oh, it looks cool. The optics look cool. But for Jordan Love, it's limit your mistakes and focus on moving the ball downfield. And then defensively, it's stopping, what is it? Is it Sonic and Knuckles? Is the nickname for those? Yes. Stopping Sonic and Knuckles. And then making sure that you keep the receivers in front of you, because one explosive play and this Lions team, is a step away from a Super Bowl again.
All right, well then let's flip it around. If the Lions are going to beat the Green Bay Packers to open the season, if they're going to walk out of Lambeau with a victory, what do the Lions need to do against Green Bay? What has to happen?
You got to take the DBs on a leash. Jared Goff has to attack them right away. As much as you love your run game, and you want your run game to bully through that D-line and those linebackers, that second level, to open up the pass game. If you can walk Keyshawn Nixon, Nate Hobbs, and Carrington Valentine on a leash to start the game, I mean, at that point, you can kind of render it over for that Packers defense. Don't turn the ball over. Green Bay, it felt like it only compounded when they got one turnover, then they get two, and you're like, how is this team doing what they're doing? And then when it opened things up for the D-line, they'd gain some confidence, and then they'd have 7 sacks in a game, as they did against the Saints and then, Cardinals last season. So I think it's take those DBs for a walk, and if you can find a way behind them or just to move the ball down the field. I mean, Justin Fields did it in the preseason opener against the Jets. That first drive looked like a cakewalk. 13 plays, 80 yards. So I think that's the biggest thing. For the defense, it's just get after Jordan Love, make him uncomfortable. I don't know what it'll be like with that injury he suffered during training camp with the non-throwing ham, if that'll affect his confidence. So I think walk the DBs and pressure Jordan Love.
All right. Any final thoughts on the season opening contest?
Honestly, Matthew, I'm shocked that you don't like kicking the season off with this divisional matchup. I feel like the tension has just built and built and built, and I wouldn't want to wait till week 7, week 8. You get week 1, and then you get Thanksgiving. I think those are the perfect 2 weeks.
I kind of follow the college football thing, right? This is an important game. Divisional games, if they're supposed to be this important, then, you're coming out of training camp preseason where most starters are not getting a lot of reps. I'm like, I don't want to wait a couple years back. The Lions played the Vikings twice in the last 6 weeks of the season. That's too long to wait. But I do think opening the season, 1 or 2 games, not against division rivals, gives you the opportunity to work things out, figure out, make the adjustments. So that way your division rivals are getting the best of you and you're getting the best of your rivals. Now, it can work both ways, right? Your team might not be right where it's going to be in midseason form, but neither will your opponent. So it is equal ground for everybody. But again, knowing that there's only 6 divisional games, I wouldn't mind waiting till like week 3 or 4 to start those off. But
if I throw a trend out there, remember the Eagles and the Packers played week 1 last year, and who won the Super Bowl? So if you like trends, maybe, the Packers playing the Lions in week 1 for you Lions fans, that could mean something. So, hey, it could go both ways.
we'll see. Well, Cam, thank you so much for joining the show and previewing the season opener contest.
Of course. Can't wait. Football's finally back. Just the best time of the year.
It definitely is. Folks, again, that's Cam Easier from WFRV TV out of Green Bay. Thank you so much, Cam.
Of course.
All right, guys, that was some great insights there by Cam. I really liked some of the things he talked about, and we're going to get into those as we do the preview ourselves from what we see. And let's start with what we usually start with at this point, which is how the Packers are different than last year. And that's something Cam didn't bring up as far as the Micah Parsons trade, because that had happened before the interview with him and I. But we got to start there. All right. Micah Parsons, James, the big trade, 2 first-round picks. They traded a big guy in the middle, Kenny Clark. And so that changes some things up too. Graham Glasgow was asked about it today. He talked about it. Talk about the Parsons trade from your perspective. Then we got to hear what Coach thinks.
Well, it brings a big name to their roster, of course. I mean, he's probably got to be one of the best 3 defensive players in the game, I would say, right now. But he's also not a one-trick pony, but he's not the greatest run defender. And they traded their best run defender away to get him. So I think it helps their defense in ways, but I think could hinder their defense in other ways. Although they do have a couple of young potential run stuffing defensive tackles that could step into that Kenny Clark role, but they're both young and fairly unproven. And then they have a veteran who's been around for a couple years that hasn't really lived up to his stock, his draft stock so far. But it obviously impacts them. They're going to need him. They're going to need Micah Parsons to get a lot of sacks and get a lot of pressure on the quarterback because their defensive secondary is not great.
No, it's not. It's a rebuilt thing, and they're going to be looking to see what that looks like. I'm not thrilled about this, the adding of Micah Parsons. I think most people would, because there's a reason you give up 2 first-round picks and you pay that much money for a guy like this, because they're hard to come by. I'm going to agree with the majority of mainstream media and say, Dallas, what were you doing on this one? It makes very little sense. Wish you would have traded him to somebody in a different division. That said, there are some elements, there are some moving parts. We're playing them in week 1, and so that will affect things as well, as Parsons has not practiced most of training camp, and he's just getting acquainted with the system in Green Bay. Coach, what do you make of this move, and how does it affect things going in, right away here so quickly?
Well, if you can't stop the run, Micah Parsons isn't even going to come in and be a factor in this game because you've lost your best D tackle. So, I mean, that's the way I look at it. Here's a couple numbers. And Green Bay, they were 7th in DVOA last year in the run stopping. Okay, Clark spent most of the season battling a toe injury, yet he still logged 685 snaps. Now he's not a Pro Bowler like he has. There's getting up there in age. The Packers also let TJ Slayton go, who had 427 snaps last year. They let him walk in free agency, so they're going to have to look to some younger guys out there. Yeah, Parsons, he's a wrecker. He'll wreck a game for you. He'll wreck a quarterback for you. But I think that they're going to put so much pressure on those younger guys. We can talk about them later if you want. The rookies and what they're looking at. So some guys are going to definitely have to step up, and I'm sure they felt that these big-bodied rookies and second and third year players were gonna be able to do that for them.
Okay, and again, they spoke to Graham Glasgow about this a little bit, and they talked about the changing out here is actually going to affect the tackles a little bit because Parsons tends to be more outside and Kenny Clark was inside, and so that will change maybe some of their assignments, some of their approach. Obviously, they move Parsons around, and at least they did in Dallas, and we expect that'll be the case here. Well, we know Parsons wasn't practicing due to a back injury. There's been stuff on social media about that. But I fully expect that he's going to play in this game. It might not be full amount of snaps, James, but you'd be shocked if he's not playing, right?
Yeah, I think he's going to play. He might be on some kind of pitch count. He's also dealing with a back injury that supposedly he's going to have to take an injection before the game on Sunday to even maybe see if he could play. So it's not 100% that he plays, but I think he probably does. But a back injury playing against the run is not going to be good. So I think he's going to be mostly a designated pass rusher in this game only, and you won't see him on early downs nearly as much as maybe you normally would. But last year when the Lions played the Cowboys, he really wasn't much of a factor in that game either. The Lions game planned him out of that game.
All right. Well, Micah Parsons is the one getting the headlines right now, but that's not the only moves Green Bay has made this offseason. They actually took a wide receiver in the first round. That was Matthew Golden. They added Savion Williams in the third round and an offensive tackle in the second round. And that goes with some early round picks, I think second or third round picks on some other wide receivers they've had. And so they've added there. James, you had some other guys you wanted to touch on that you thought might be impact players for them going into this game?
And they had some guys they drafted late in the draft that I think could be players that impact for them down the road. Warren Brinson, defensive tackle from Georgia, should be a pretty decent one. I think here, Gutekunst has actually drafted a player from Georgia 5 times since 2021. And then they also picked up Nazir Stackhouse as an undrafted free agent, who's another massive defensive tackle from Georgia. And he made the 53 for them out of training camp and made it 21 straight years in which the Packers have had at least one undrafted free agent make the 53, the initial 53-man roster. But they didn't draft defensive players hardly at all in the draft until the end. They didn't take one until the fourth round. They took an edge, Baron Sorrell, and then they got Colin Oliver in the fifth round, who is a guy that we had talked about pre-draft as a potential fit for the Lions. And I think he could end up kind of being a steal, but he's also a little bit redundant with Micah Parsons and could kind of end up getting buried by this trade. So, and Stackhouse was somebody that I had the Lions drafting in the seventh round in a lot of mock drafts, just to kind of maybe have a insurance policy for Broderick Martin.
All right, so the Packers have added a good number of guys there. That does make things different. Coach, anything you're seeing different from this Packers team than we saw as the last year ended?
No, and I think talking about the two guys that James just talked about, Colby Wooden is probably the prime candidate to fill in for Clark. He's probably 290 pounds, which he's kind of undersized. But Stackhouse at 6'4", 327, and Brinson at 6'5", 315 are those nose tackle type of guys. The good thing for us as Lions fans is Brinson spent 64% of his snaps during the preseason as a B gap defender and 29% as the over tackle, like on the other side. So if he is going to fill into that, he's got a crash course of it. I'm sure he understands the defense. So I think, from those standpoints, I think they've got the guys that they feel are going to fill in for Clark, but it may not pan out until later in the season.
All right. Well, you know what else is different, folks? Roaster Jack Coffee Company. They've been hand-selecting and roasting coffee from around the world since 1999. Order fresh roasted-to-order coffee at roasterjack.com and save 20% with the code LIONS. All right, so what are we expecting out of Green Bay then in this game? We know they got some new guys. They got some new pieces to that puzzle. Some are young, some were traded for. And so I like what Cam talked about. I think Green Bay is going to want to start fast in this game because last year it seemed like they started slow a lot. So I'm looking for potentially a quick starting offensive, game plan or I think the Packers are going to want to create turnovers like last year because they know that can change the game. And so those are a couple things I'm looking at. Coach, from the coaching standpoint, what are you thinking? What are we going to expect out of Green Bay in this game, the first game of the season?
It'll be interesting. Here's one thing I'm going to talk about. They went out and got Banks in free agency back in March, Aaron Banks, and got him in guard, which was able to move Jenkins over to center, who was the guard on that position, in the position that Banks took over, because they felt that their center was not good enough. Which I think we've heard that where the centers change and they move a veteran over to play center, a guard center. So I think that could be something they designed to maybe take some pressure off Love, and now Jacobs can run the ball better because they have more. Their offensive line is definitely better than it was last year, and so I think that may be one of the things so that people aren't pinning their ears back and getting after Love, and giving him establish the run and then let Love turn it loose. They got the integral parts on the offense. I mean, they got Dobbs, Reed, Kraft, Matthew Golden, the rookie, and Jacobs. I mean, they have some studs, and so I think that's what LaFleur is trying to do. I think he wants to establish the run a little bit more, and then be able to kind of open it up with the Golden and Reed and the rest of that. Where they got all these they have eight young wide receivers last year. I don't remember. Which they were getting a bunch of injuries and stuff. So, and then they got Hardman too, basically for punt return. I think to take away some of that on, because Reed's been doing that. So I think that's what they're going to go after with us. I think we're going to see the heavy run, and then a lot of dumps to Kraft and the rest of the boys.
All right, they're going to try to, and Josh Jacobs was a great pickup. I lauded that right away last year, and he had this type of success I expected him to have. James, they know that Jordan Love needed more help, though. They drafted those two receivers, but what are you expecting out of this receiving game week one? It might not be what most people are seeing on paper.
Yeah, because you've got a lot of guys for them that are their wide receiver core is banged up. It's very young, but it's also very banged up. Christian Watson is out because he got hurt late in the season last year with a torn ACL, so he's going to miss the beginning chunk of the season. Similar to like Ali McNeil or Rodriguez, where the rehab is just going over into this year. But Dontavian Wicks, Jaden Reed, and Savion Williams are all banged up and listed as questionable. So that's three of their top 5 or 6 wide receivers now. So I would expect a heavy dose of Josh Jacobs in this game, especially with Jenkins moving over to center, because he's much better run blocker than they had last year at center. And then adding Banks, who they paid one of the highest paid guards in the league, $77 million over 4 years. So I expect them to run a lot, and maybe not throw the ball as much as you would expect them, considering the depth they have at wide receiver. But Nate Hobbs was their other big free agent that they brought in over the offseason, the corner from the Raiders. And he's going to step in and starting at corner, but Keyshawn Nixon is the other one. He's mostly just kind of thought of as a return guy, not necessarily a corner, and he's going to end up having to start at corner for them. They ditched both of their starting corners from last year, so I think that secondary on defense is kind of their weakness. They're going to need Parsons, Gary, and Van Ness to get to that quarterback in a hurry.
Yeah, and I do think that the tackles are going to be busy in this game for the Lions, because I do think, especially if it's a specific passing down, which I don't even know what a passing down is for the Lions, 3rd and 14, 3rd and 15, because we know on 3rd and 12 they will run the ball or whatever. But with Rashawn Gary and Micah Parsons lining up on opposite sides of each other, that will keep the tackles busy. And so you're exactly right. I think their goal is going to probably be to put pressure on Goff. And it reminds you of some of the games where we've seen it, where it's been, 2-step drop, quick, get that ball out as quick as possible. And so let's flip it over. What are we expecting out of the Lions this game to counteract what we think the Packers are going to do? Now, some great insights were shared. Calvin Shepard shared one about Terrion Arnold developing quite a bit. He says he's got the potential to take that step to be in a CB1 right now. He saw that much growth out of him. And so that excites me about the Lions defense, seeing that Shepard's seeing that out of him. Hutchinson was talked about by Coach Campbell about how he is back and he has even learned more of the craft. And so from the defensive side with the Lions, let's start there. Coach, what are you expecting out of the Lions defense going into this game?
Well, I think they're gonna focus on stopping the run, and we got two pretty big bodies in there to stop the run, and Williams and Reed. He Campbell. I heard Campbell talked about Reed, about how well he is. Reader, I'm sorry, Reed, as he's how he's been helping the young guys, and he had a full camp. He last year he didn't have a full camp with us, so I think we're gonna, again, we're gonna try to make it one dimensional for on defense for their offense. You got Reed, who's banged. He's got Jones fracture, guys. He's going to play on the year with the Jones fracture. That's what he's saying. And so I think Campbell and I think Shepard and those guys are really going to focus on, let's get Love back into the passing game. And then, they got a pretty good tight end, and they got a rookie wide out. And, we already alluded to the injuries that they have at wide receiver. So, and because once they get into one dimension where they have to throw the ball, if we stop the run, that new bend on that guy that got injured week 5 last year, that number 97 guy that's just dying to play football. And we're gonna see him and Davenport and the Wheat, I think, and the rest of the boys. So I think that's the one thing, is I think they're gonna stop that run. They're gonna show that offensive line they're not as good as they think they could be, and then they're gonna turn Hutch loose and the rest of the boys. So. It'll be fun to watch how they do it, but I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to predict it's going to be stop the run, make Love pass.
Yeah, that sounds like a very, very logical thought process that I can get behind, because, you force them into those longer situations, and that creates pressing, right, Coach? And when you're pressing, that's when you make those mistakes, and you take Josh Jacobs out of the equation, or you don't maybe take him out of it. You slow him down and contain him, and put yourself into those longer passing downs that can cause more problems. James, what about you? What are you expecting out of this defense for the Lions?
A lot of what Jerry said, pretty much. I think that they're going to really focus on the run, and just trying to take Josh Jacobs out of this game as much as they can, and then force Jordan Love to win this game with a wide receiver core that's beat up and pretty young. Two high draft picks that have a lot of talent, but also don't have a whole lot of experience in the NFL yet. So I think that's the way if they're gonna roll the dice, they're gonna roll the dice that the Packers have to beat them through the air, not on the ground.
All right. Well, if preseason's any indication, which it probably shouldn't be the biggest indication considering the starters didn't play, I think Kelvin Shepard's going to throw a lot of different looks on defense, and I think you're going to see pressure from a lot of different areas. And I'm really excited to see that one, because I think they're going to, trying to, like they said, make everything look the same, make everything that's the same look different, and just really challenge Jordan Love to read that defense to try to figure out what they're doing. And I'm expected to see a very talented Detroit Lions defense take the field on Sunday, and hopefully give the Green Bay Packers a lot of work. So let's flip it around then. Let's look at the offense. Scotty Montgomery talked about Jamison Williams developing so well this offseason. A lot of growth. Talked about building muscle so he can get in his cuts and out of his cuts quicker. The other side of this, though, Goff was talked about it or asked about it today about the offense, and he said, you really don't know what your identity is until a few weeks into the season, which I think we've talked about this before on the show, and he even talked about the Rams game last year. He goes, it takes time to figure it out, and he goes, it'd be nice to come out firing on all cylinders, but the reality is that's hard to do right away. So, Coach, what are you thinking the Lions are going to do? I mean, I think we already alluded to it earlier in the show, folks, but what are you thinking here, Coach?
Well, again, our mantra, what Dan Campbell then want to do is just punch people in the mouth and run them over. When you got two great running backs that you have. But there was a lot of deep balls being thrown during camps and stuff like that. I heard about it with JMO's thing. So, could they attack? Here's a couple of things. That Nixon is a starter. He's an on and off starter for the Packers. He's a corner in the last 3 years. Okay. He's a great kick returner, but his grades were terrible. His 98% completion when thrown against him and which is just unbelievable. And then you got Hobbs, who's the new addition after 4 years with the Raiders. So, I think they'll try to bring them into the box. They're going to run, and then they're going to throw some deep balls. I think we'll see more deep balls in the first game than we probably did all of last year, just because of what they're saying with JMO. And then again, they'll probably they'll make their adjustments at halftime and decide, okay, we're just going to run the ball. That's my feeling. We're going to run the ball. We're going to push it. We're going to attack those young defensive tackles, the young nose. If they use the 290-pound nose, you're going to get a lot of double teams and stuff like that with our two nasty guards, and then with Glasgow in there. So I think we'll establish the run, but I would not shy away saying a couple deep balls within the first two possessions, just to see what we can do to those corners.
Well, and that's it. There are a lot of different elements at play here, right? The Green Bay Packers have a secondary that we think is susceptible.
Mm-hmm.
They also have just gotten rid of their arguably best defensive tackle against the run, and we know the Lions like to run. But we also know that Johnny Morton, new offensive coordinator, has talked about airing it out a little bit and or maybe using the backs in the passing game more. So, James, what are you thinking? What are you expecting the Lions in this first game on offense?
Yeah, one interesting thing that Scotty Montgomery also talked about when he talked about Jameson Williams was Jackson Meeks and how it looks like he could get up onto the 53 at some point pretty soon. And then you also had news come out of practice today that Isaac Tesla wasn't practicing today, and with no explanation as to why he was not there. So that could be a possibility. Just throwing that out there, that maybe Meeks is the guy that's brought up from the practice squad this week if Tesla's injury is anything, or if it even is an injury. We also have that the Packers changed their defense around this year. They're going to run a 4-3 instead of a 3-4, which is what we've been used to the Packers running for decades. So it's going to be a different look than you're normally seeing from the Packers. So I think they'll have to take that into consideration too. So,
Okay. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of things to look at there from the defense. I have a hard time arguing with the running game going because that sets everything up.
mm-hmm.
And obviously the Lions, they want to avoid that 3rd and long. So that way you don't know what they're going to do on 3rd and 2, 3rd and 4. And that could be those times to set up and take those deep shots. So, but I'm expecting to see, like Coach said, some more deep shots down the field and a variety of people involved, including tight end Sam Laporte over the middle.
Right. Yeah, and back to that, what is known about their defense right now? Okay, I mean, if you think about it, Clark's gone, right? We don't have any idea who they're going to start at tackles probably, but we do know what the DBs look like. Okay, they can't hide them. So that's kind of why I think we're going to take some shots at them right away.
Yeah. And, when speaking to Green Bay reporter Cam Ezer, was asking him what he thought the Lions need to do to win. He said the Lions should attack the defensive backs. He's like, you should go after them right away. He also said the Lions shouldn't turn the ball over. And then on the other side, he said the Lions need to get pressure on Jordan Love and make him uncomfortable. Those were his keys for that. And so, I mean, that makes sense. He's the one watching the defensive backs right away as well. And so that would be a big key. All right. Well, I think we've covered all the major storylines and everything unexpected that's come up so far. So now it's time for the ref report. James, that's your expertise. What did you come up with?
The Lions get the Clete Blakeman crew this week. For week 1, they had him last season twice, both on the road against Chicago and Green Bay. They won both of those games, obviously, because they went undefeated on the road. In those games, they were only whistled 5 and 7 times, whereas the Packers and Bears were each whistled 10 times in those games. So his crew actually has called 15 more penalties on the home teams than the away teams last year, which is a bit of an anomaly for an official crew. It's usually either pretty balanced or they call more penalties on the road team.
Interesting. And correct me if I'm wrong, but did the Lions not get one single pass interference call called against like the team they played against when the Lions run offense? Did they not benefit once? Is that true, Coach?
I believe there might have been one at the end of the year.
I think they got
Greg?
one at the end of the year.
It was a makeup for the other 16 games.
Yeah.
But
All
when
right,
You can't get called for pass interference if you're 5 yards open.
exactly, and you got a quarterback who throws you open, so that's why there's no pass interference calls. But hopefully hopefully it stays the same.
all right. Well, now it's prediction time on the show, folks. You can predict anything you want in this segment. All right. I, for one, believe the Lions can win every single game they play this year. I believe they can. I didn't say they will. I don't think there's a game they can't win because I think the roster is that good. This week, I'm not going with a win or a loss. I'm going with two things. One, I predict a game as in like a really good game. But I'm going to predict that Jared Goff and Jamison Williams connect on a pass for more than 35 yards. All right. I think that's going to be that's my prediction. Maybe it's an easy one. It's week 1. I don't really know what to expect. Like Goff said, they might not be firing on all cylinders, but that's what I'm going with this week. Coach, you have a prediction?
I have a prediction that the announcers are going to go, "Oh my God, is Hutch good?" That's my prediction.
Okay, we'll be listening. Make sure you put the closed caption on there, folks, just in case you can't hear it over the audible noise going on in Lambeau Field there. James, what do you have for a prediction?
Mine's going to have the number 35 in it too, because I think that Gibbs and Montgomery are going to touch the ball 35 times between them.
Ooh.
They're gonna pound that defensive line and open up the pass game, but they're gonna pound the rock.
I like it.
With no Kenny Clark there.
All right. Well, it's that time for final thoughts. Anything I haven't asked you want to add there, Coach?
One thing I do want to add is last year when Hutch went out, we had a 44.3% blitz rate. If that would have went on for the whole year, we'd have been the number one most blitzes in a game. So I'm interested to see how close we get that with Hutch in, because I think Shepard is going to blitz a little bit more in certain situations. So that's one of the things I'm going to watch all year, because I really want to see how much Shepard is going to go above what AG did. So I just, for me as a defensive guy, I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, some of those preseason games, the looks he was showing, I was like, wow. And that was without the starters. Yeah. So that will be really interesting. These first couple weeks are going to be very intriguing to see. James, how about you? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, well, I like to lurk around on the opposing team's chat rooms and see what they're talking about a little bit. The talk about the Micah Parsons trade is interestingly divisive on the Packers message board that I was in. A bunch of people thought that they paid way too much for him, money-wise and compensation-wise, giving up 2 first-round picks and Kenny Walker. And some people think that this is the move that's going to define Gutekunst's job there, and they're going to cost him the job, or they're going to win a Super Bowl in the next 2 years. That like they're saying he has to win a Super Bowl in the next 2 years, or he's going to get fired over this trade.
Wow, that's those are some strong fan perspectives there.
That is some pretty strong opinions.
All right, well, folks, I hope you've enjoyed all these analytics, all these insights. Reminder: this episode is sponsored by Roaster Jack Coffee in Traverse City. Fresh roasted beans since 1999. Get yours at roasterjack.com with the code LIONS. That will get you 20% off. Thank you for tuning in, folks. Please tell your friends and family about the show. Find us on social media as well as all major streaming platforms. We'd love to hear your thoughts and reviews. Check out more episodes and content at notthesameoldlions.com. And until next time, stay gritty, my friends.